On the Radio Wammo breakfast time now is 9:30.
G'day, mate. I'm John. How you doing, Steve? You alright? Pretty good. Nice to meet you.
I've had a gutful. Right, we're sitting here. Some little kid's being touched up.
What do you think about that?
I don't think I should be doing that.
I don't think I should be doing that, do you? You want to go up again? Yeah. You're a natural, mate.
You think your mum's going to like this? Probably not.
Oh man, I'm getting the chills back. The movie is called Snowtown. It's based on the true story of John Bunting, Australia's worst serial killer, who in the mid-90s killed 11 people and put them in barrels. You might remember this on the news. It shocked everyone at the time. The movie is now out at the International Film Festival, making its way around the country. Joining me in the Kiwi studio, the director, who is Justin Kurzel, and Daniel Henshall, who is the actor playing John Bunting. Hello to you both.
Morning. How you going, brother?
Good. I was a little bit nervous about about talking to you guys because I watched the movie yesterday and man, it just left me chilled to the bone. I was quite freaked out actually, and more so, of course, because it's a true story. Justin, this is your first feature film?
Yeah. How
the heck did you get around to doing this one? Strapping this one on for the first time.
Oh, I never thought I would make this as my first film, but the murders actually happened pretty close to where I grew up. So I guess I was just kind of curious as to, like you are, any place that you're kind of born, why something this horrific and this brutal and this kind of depraved happened so close to kind of home.
It makes you wonder, especially in a place like Australia. I mean, New Zealand and Australia, we're one and the same in many ways, and just couldn't imagine this happening in my neighbourhood.
Yeah, well, a lot of this was about the community. It was a really low socioeconomic community that was, dealing with high levels of child abuse in the area. And what was so extraordinary was that this man came in and just kind of shook everyone up and said, hey, this has got to stop, and kind of created this vigilante group and started doing things, that he didn't think the cops or anyone else were doing. So he kind of, I guess, became this Charles Manson type figure, very charismatic, which is unusual for a serial killer. Serial killers are usually just hermits, and this guy was very social. Everyone knew him, and managed to, get a whole lot of people involved.
He was the guy who would turn up at a barbecue, right? And just be the kind of the life of the barbecue, stand around the barbecue, right? And that's something that you, Daniel, have just been able to capture in such a real and vivid way.
Oh, thank you.
How much do you look like the guy?
That's a funny thing. I guess it's somewhat, especially when bearded.
Yeah.
I think he spent most of his life unbearded in the film. The way we portray him, we film him bearded. Otherwise, he looked like a very young man. They were, being out there in the community, there were a lot of comments that you do look like you're a dead ringer for him.
Right.
So I think there are similarities there.
Must have been a bit of a worry.
but the thing about John is that he was pretty normal-looking kind of guy. He had a weird smile on his face. People all knew him and couldn't believe that he was involved in it. So Dan has that sort of vibe about him as well, which is why we were attracted to casting him.
Yeah, and also I suppose the thing is that he was anti-pedophiles. He was anti-drug takers. Which I guess most people in society would be anti. It makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah. No, he had a. When he came into this family's life that is kind of corrupted in the film, he was believed in order. He cooked them food every day, went to parent-teacher interviews. He kind of did have a moral code. It just became quite corrupted by this psychopathic kind of nature in him.
What was a little bit unclear to me was, did he have a history of killing before he met the family?
He was involved in a killing before he met the family, but there is suggestion and thoughts that there might have been activities going on years ago. It
starts off tame. If you can call it tame. It's tame compared to what he does later on. But he scares the paedophile away from across the road from the family, right? By chucking guts and whatnot at the house, and you think maybe that's going to be the extent of it. If you didn't know the full history of what went on, but it gets a lot worse. Tell me about the actual making of a film like this. How how do you end up having fun on the set? Because, I mean, making films should be fun, right?
I think you compensate. I mean, we did, I don't know, subconsciously or unconsciously. I think, you know, that you're dealing with such heavy material during each take that, you know, when the camera stops rolling and Justin calls cut or action because he forgot to call, whatever he forgot to call.
Yeah. Because there isn't a scene that isn't grim.
Right. But
Oh no! I don't believe that. I think there are moments of kind of lightness and shade in it, but I do think that it is heavy. It is very heavy, but it is easy to sort of finish watching this film and forget all the small human moments that you know, because it is so brutal. I mean, if you read the books that it's based on, it is almost unreadable. So to kind of manage that and try to get some sort of humanity in the story was a real challenge. I mean, that's why we filmed in the actual area where it happened, and most of the actors, apart from Dan and Richard, are non-actors, first-timers that grew up in the streets and in the areas where it happened. We just cast from. So, you know, everyone had a real respect to what was going on and why we were telling the story, but at the same time, everyone's pretty hard there, pretty hardened up, that you have to infuse making a film like this with some sort of release. I mean,
the release was the comedy.
Humour, and
I mean,
you know,
we
So there's a bit of black humour on set?
I wouldn't say black humour, not black, but there was a lot of silliness that went on between, you know, as Justin was saying, like there's a lot of energy that needs to be released in between the heaviness, and I think there was a lot of shenanigans, for one of
you can't keep it up, and to go to this level of brutality, especially that's on screen, you really have to kind of come from a pretty level-headed place. You can't take this sort of shit home. And I think that was a concern, not only for me, because I had to live in it for a year and a half, and was hoping that when I finished, I wasn't going to suddenly be a hermit living in a weatherboarded house somewhere in a forest, you know, challenging my demons.
Making
and
chutney.
Also had responsibility for the actors and stuff, that, you know, that Dan was able to come out of this character. And
tell us about that, Danny. I mean, you had to go inside the character, obviously. One of the worst possible minds you could think about getting into.
Look, I mean, we were extremely close from the outset about what we wanted to do, and I guess that bond that we formed between me and Justin and the crew and eventually the cast helped a lot, because it was easy to pull yourself out after each take. A lot of the film is done through there's a lot of intention. There isn't a lot of physicalising the actions, so the character might portray something on screen, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm, as the actor, intentionally going through that. I'm just connecting to the person in the scene, and I think there was, from the outset, Justin was all about, we have to make this about relationships, and I have to make it as, you know, how are you going to win these people over, and how are you going to talk to these people? So that was the driving force, rather than what you see that character do. So I never really went to a dark place, you know, except for one or two scenes, which...
Well, but that's because your character, that's because John most of the time is actually pretty, you know, social, affable kind of guy. You know, he's cooking food, he's he's making people laugh, and then I think it was just one day Dan was on set when we were doing this particular murder scene, which happened over 2 days, where he's standing there covered in blood with a pair of pliers in his hands, and he suddenly went, right, so this is what I'm involved in. And I think that says a lot about the dynamics of the character, is that he was someone that was just so everyday, you know.
It seems to me, though, that at the same time there is a lot of violence there, but there's a lot of implied violence as well. So there's been a lot of discipline applied to what you do, or how far you actually go with visualising the story.
Yeah, well, there were 12 murders, and we only bring to screen one, and we only bring to screen that one because it's Jamie Vlasakis, the boy's character who we're following through the film. I guess his greatest initiation that John gets him to do.
Isn't it funny, though, that I feel like I saw more murders, but you're just saying I didn't. But that's the craft of the filmmaking right there, where I felt like I did experience that, but indeed it wasn't the case.
It didn't. I think we wanted to be extremely respectful.
I mean, look, if I brought to life some of the stuff that happened that we read in the books and the transcripts and stuff, it would be unwatchable. And there's always this thing in theatre in cinema that you really, you know, it's about what your mind thinks it's seen. And but this one particular murder, you know, it was about taking an audience to the edge of a kind of brutality that I don't think's been seen before, especially in Australia. Not shying away from it and sanitising it.
It won the Audience Award at the 2011 Adelaide Film Festival. What has been the reaction, though, from the Australian public? I guess not everyone's seen it yet or had the opportunity to see it yet, but is there resistance or do people welcome it?
No, look, it's done really, really well.
Yeah,
It hit over $1 million in the box office yesterday, and I think there's a massive curiosity, especially in Australia, as to kind of why this happened in our back door.
We do have this need, and I suppose, I mean, it's a worldwide thing, but like, say, in New Zealand we had the Aramoana massacre, and that has been told on the big screen. We do have this need to understand these events through film.
I think to understand evil and the potential in all of us to be attracted to darkness, and I think it's so foreign to most people that, you have an appetite to kind of just understand a little bit more as to why human beings go off track at times. So,
who's up for more awards? Because I'm sure there's got to be a few more on the way.
Well, the thing I'm proudest most in the film is the performances. I think they're
right.
I think Dan's performance as John's pretty.
Yeah.
I mean, I rate it up there with Eric Banner and Chopper, definitely.
What is it? The Logies? Is that what's the Australian equivalent?
No, it's the
AFIs.
AFI Awards, the Australian Film Institute Awards.
Get my vote.
Yeah, yeah, and all these non-actors, at least first timers, we're hoping that they get recognised as they should, because their performances are braver than most performances you get out of films. So we're fingers crossed.
And so, what next for you both? Is it a romantic comedy or?
Well, in all seriousness, mine's a black comedy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've
have you been auditioning?
I've got a comedy coming out at the end of the year.
Oh, you do too.
Yeah. The same guys who did The Castle and The Dish made a new film, and it comes out at the end of the year or start of next year. So,
cool.
Instead of a fat, hairy, psychopathic killer, I'm playing a lycra-clad amateur triathlete lawyer. So it's a little bit different. It's a little bit different.
Yeah,
but,
not just a tad.
Yeah.
The movie is called Snowtown, and it is screening at the New Zealand International Film Festival today and tomorrow in Auckland at the Sky City Theatre. It also will be screening in Wellington as well. Check nzff.co.nz. Thanks very much to Justin and Daniel, both of you coming
Thanks
here.
for having us, mate.
And thanks for making it as well. Wonderful stuff.